Oh.
Hello, 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 everyone. My name is Triple P, TRIPPLE and I am your astrology pimp, your astrology prophet, and your astrology priest. And today's 7 Seals Astrology Prophetics video topic will be, why does God allow suffering? However, before I continue this video, for clarification purposes only, I know many of you guys have seen me create videos and I've used references from the Buddhists, the Hindus, and even at times I will use uh, biblical references in reference to Joshua Christos, Jesus, and things of that sort. From I tend to use many different sources when it comes down to delivering information because during my spiritual journey, I have accumulated knowledge, wisdom, and understanding from many, many different spiritual beliefs and spiritual practices as well. However, I am clarifying this because when I use the word God, I know that that is a very, very controversial and very delicate word. And so I do not want anyone to believe that I'm speaking about a particular deity in I'm not speaking of any particular deity. I'm not speaking from, I'm not, speaking basically from a Buddhist perspective. However, I do use many Buddhist concepts, such the non-duality concepts, things of that sort. But I'm not promoting Buddha. I'm not promoting Allah. I'm not promoting Yahweh. I'm not promoting Jesus. I'm not promoting His Majesty. All of my videos are promoting you. This is who I am talking about. However, I use these different spiritual teachings and principles to get my point across. However, I am not here to convince you to join or become a part of any particular spiritual belief or spiritual or religious practice. I am therefore again only utilizing all of the knowledge that I have and just to get my point across. However, I would say that I would be considered more of an existentialist. And an existentialist is where I usually, uh, the angle I try to come from, I'm not being biased towards any particular religion, any particular belief, any particular God, if that may make any sense. So again, coming from an existentialist perspective, and holistic perspective, I don't have a particular deity or a God that I'm trying to ascribe my viewers to uh, follow per se. So with that being said, using the word God, I'm not referring to a particular God. However, again, because the East and the West is, have different concepts of God. Again, I'm not promoting Buddha, Allah, Shiva, Yahweh, uh, Jehovah, Jesus, His Majesty. I am not promoting any of these uh, spiritual deities, if I may say. I am just delivering information that is going to be more beneficial to individuals with more of an open mind. Because I believe the more information we have, the more knowledge, wisdom, and understanding we have, we will be able to make better decisions. Uh, because there was a scripture, I think it was Jesus, he did say, my people perish because of lack of knowledge. And that is what I'm talking about today, delivering more knowledge. So with that being said, hopefully that clears up what I'm trying to say. So suffering again is at the root cause of all belief systems trying to reduce suffering. No matter what religion, no matter what spiritual practice, we all are trying to obtain some type of freedom from suffering and obtain happiness. That is usually the ultimate goal, and that is mainly the main reasons why many of us may follow a particular religious or spiritual belief or practices, because we believe that these beliefs and these practices will eliminate suffering and bring some sort of peace, some sort of joy into our lives. So again, however, like I said, I do come from an existentialist perspective. A non-duality perspective is usually where I am coming from. So with that being said, again, back to the topic, why does God allow suffering? And I would say that this, again, this video is more so for educational purposes only, because this subject matter has been debated for centuries, decades, and eons. From the beginning of time, man have always asked the question, why does God allow suffering? Why is there suffering in the world? Why is there evil in the world? This question is not a new question. This question has been asked, debated for eons. From the beginning of time, man have always wondered why God has allowed suffering. However, in this video, I am going to somewhat speak of an Abrahamic God, because again, the Eastern belief systems such as Buddhism and Hinduism and Sikhism, they have usually a different concept of God, a more non-dualistic perspective of God. So again, I am going to speak more so from an Abrahamic God perspective. So again, but I'm not picking on any particular God, because like I said, I am an existentialist. I don't like to label myself as anything, but just to make myself clear, I am not picking on any particular God. I am not promoting any particular deity. I am just here to deliver information the best way that I can by utilizing all of the information that I've accumulated throughout the years from different religious practices and spiritual beliefs as well. So again, if you see me speak of the Buddhists, the Hindus, or the Bible, do not necessarily say that I am coming from that angle. That's the information that I feel would be most suitable for whatever topic that I'm uh, portray, uh, trying to portray at this time. But anyhow, with that being said, from an Abraham perspective, this question is being asked for millennium. Why is there suffering in the world? Why does God allow suffering? Why does a God who is all loving, all knowing, and all powerful allow these atrocities in the world? And this video, again, because coming from an existentialist perspective, I am going to more so give some of you guys a different perspective, something new to think about, because I know most individuals who just basically know of an Abrahamic God, they tend to not necessarily know any other belief systems. They don't know that much about any other system, so they tend to just know one thing and one thing alone. So, however, today I will hopefully educate many of you guys and give you guys a different perspective on God as well. So, with that being said, why would a loving, all knowing, all powerful being, entity, deity allow the atrocities in the world? Why would this being, this thing, this God, this all knowing, all powerful allow children to die, bombs, wars, famine, disease, and things of that sort? And so this again topic has been debated for some time, and many would say, if you ask, some religious or spiritual leaders, they would say that one main reason is God is testing us. They would say God is testing our faith, and nothing happens, everything happens for a reason, and God is testing our faith. That sounds good per se. However, when we look at it on a deeper perspective, we see there are children dying, there's children being born with such a deformities and things of that sort. And so that question, that answer per se, again, it sounds good, you know, theoretically per se, but when you really look at it again, if God is testing us, what does the young child who was born deformed or born with some type of disability or some type of disease per se, and this child didn't do anything, what is the purpose of that child being tested? Yes, then you might say maybe the parents are being tested, but then now the child is being used as a scapegoat per se. Why would God allow a child to suffer born deformed, cancer, and all of these other diseases just to test, just to strengthen the fate of a parent? That's basically the sort of child is a scapegoat. So that doesn't really sound too acceptable. Again, from an Abrahamic perspective, we tend to just accept it as that. It sounds okay, so we live with it. But deep down inside, we know it doesn't really sound too well. And then sometimes we may say, yeah, well, God is strengthening us. Yes, and yes, through atrocities and through different situations, yes, we do get strengthened. But again, back to the innocent and the child that has been born. What does it benefit the child per se to be born with a disability where it cannot walk, it cannot talk, it has tubes in its lungs, and the list goes on. It cannot even breathe with through some machinery type thing. So again, this does not necessarily doesn't stand up to scrutiny as well. Then you may say, well, free will. Yes, free will, that sounds a little okay. That sounds a lot better. Free will, that is the reason. Yes, we do have free will. And yes, we do make up our decisions based on having the free will to do whatever we want to do. However, again, this too, again, does not give us a good answer for why the young child who was just born again, this individual doesn't even have free will because they don't even know anything that happens. They didn't do anything for anything for them to have any free will. They was just born deformed or having problems or whatever the case may be. So again, that too answer again. So every answer, basically, there's many answers. But if we really look back at it, if we look deeper into it, we will see that when it comes down to innocent newborn babies and so forth, they don't need to be challenged. They don't need to practice their faith. They don't need to strengthen their belief system. They don't need to do anything. They were innocent. I'm just using innocent children as an example. When there's a war, there's bombings and different things. Innocent, be it children, boys, young girls, men, elderly, all of these individuals are injured. All of these individuals are killed. And so, I mean, it sounds okay per se to say God is testing us per se, but why allow the innocent, some of the people to suffer that does not necessarily deserve to suffer, especially again, the newborn and the children that was actually didn't have any choice in the matter to say that they even wanted to be here. So again, when we look at these answers that we have given throughout the ages, we will also see that these answers are not so credible per se, or they are not stable, if I may say. So today, what I'm going to do is we're going to look at some of the a different concept from a different perspective. And I know most individuals may not be too familiar with non-duality. They may not be familiar with the more perspectives from the Eastern religions such as Buddhism, Hinduism, Sikhism, things of that sort. We tend to not really be too familiar with those concepts coming from the East. However, that is the angle that I'm going to come from today, a totally different angle. And I hopefully this angle that I'm going to come from is going to give many individuals a different perspective, a whole different perspective on what they believe, the reason why God would allow suffering. And again, from an Advaita Vedanta perspective, one of the root cause, I would not say one of the root cause, the root cause is not knowing thyself. Being separated from money causes suffering. The feeling, I should say, the feeling of separation is the root cause of suffering. Feeling separated from not having enough money would cause suffering. Feeling separated from not having enough friends, you would suffer. Feeling not separated from not having having love, you will feel suffering. Suffering is the root cause. Separation is the root cause of all suffering, because when the opposite of suffering is happiness, and when everything is going great in our lives, when we have money, when we have things of that sort, when we have things going well, our bills are paid, we have food in the fridge and food in the cupboard, and extra fundings to do whatever we do, the opposite of suffering is happiness. So when things are going great, we tend to not complain. We tend to not ask, why is this happening? Why am I making so much money? Why did I get a raise? Why did I find this attractive young man or this young lady, or whatever age it may be? We tend to not question anything when things are going well. However, when things are not going so well, we tend to look at things from a suffering perspective. So again, what I'm going to do here today is going to give you guys a different perspective on suffering from an Advaita Vedanta, from a non-duality perspective, and that is what I'm going to introduce to some of you guys today. And this, from that perspective, you will have a different understanding of why God would allow suffering. So, from an Advaita Vedanta perspective, a non duality perspective, God is not really seen the same way as the Western God per se. And I'm just using the word God loosely because many of these Eastern philosophies do not necessarily utilize the word God as we may do in the West. So again, the West looks at the term God completely different as from an Eastern perspective. There's two different things. That is why I'm saying again, I am trying to introduce you guys to a whole completely different perspective on this thing we call God. Again, again, like I was saying, I'm going to give you guys a different perspective, a totally different perspective on how we view God from an non-duality perspective, from an Advaita Vedanta perspective, and this is completely different from what we have been taught or told in the West. So, from a non-duality perspective, and a duality perspective, we have to look at God either from a personal or an impersonal perspective. And so, from an Abrahamic perspective, we tend to believe that, again, I am not here because I know how sensitive individuals are when it comes down to their belief. People will, don't, I'm just here to educate. So don't think that I'm, again, like that's why I started off in the beginning of this video stating that I am an existentialist. I am not, I am therefore, with that being said, I am not a theist. However, I am not an atheist as well. So, however, I'm here to educate. So I don't want anybody to say, oh, I'm picking on their belief. Oh, I'm picking on their God. No, that is not what I'm here to do. I am here to educate. And again, coming from an existentialist perspective, I'm coming from a neutral perspective. That is why, again, none of my videos are promoting a particular belief system, a particular deity, or a particular God. I am simply trying to introduce you to yourself. I am trying to get you to know yourself. That is the root cause of all of these videos. I am not here again promoting any particular deity or any particular God. So with that being said, I am not picking on any particular deity. I'm just utilizing the information that I know to get my point across as best as possible. So again, from an Abrahamic perspective, Christianity, Islam, things of that sort that utilize the Bible per se. These individuals, again, see God from an all-knowing, all-powerful concept, all-powerful, all-loving concept, a personal God, if I may say. A personal God is a God that basically looks out for you, takes care of you, does all of these things for you, that helps you, that heals you, and all of these things. So that is a personal God, and the individuals in the West, most individuals in the West, almost all individuals in the West, if I may say, believe in a personal God. And the reason they believe in a personal God is because they believe in a personal self. And if you listen to all of my videos are coming from a non-dualist perspective and coming from a perspective where there is no self. I am constantly trying to eliminate having the idea of the false self, the ego, the false you. I am constantly trying to eliminate or destroy that false self, if I may say, with information. However, again, individuals in the West tend to believe in a personal God because they believe in a personal self. They believe that they exist separate from God. That is the difference with that is a personal God and a impersonal God. There is no separation from you and God. And again, when I use the word God, I'm using this word loosely because most individuals do not tend to understand when I use the word God. They don't understand. I am not talking about, and that is why again I hate to use the word God, because I don't want individuals to believe that I'm talking about an Abrahamic God and I'm talking about this God or that God. I'm talking about Allah or whatever God, Shiva, whoever God. I am not talking about. That's why again I tend to shy away from utilizing the word God. If you listen to what most of my videos, I use the word consciousness, awareness, pure consciousness, pure awareness, pure being, isness, I-ness. These is what those concepts or those terms or what I would consider to be God per se. However, I'm not referring to the Abrahamic God, the God that parted the Red Sea, or things of that nature. So that is why I tend to shy away from the word God, because I know again most individuals, when they hear the word God, they tend to associate God with their particular belief. And again, I am not here promoting any particular belief. So again, I'm just crossing my I's and dotting my T's. Yeah, because sorry, crossing my T's and dotting my I's, because again, I just know sensitive some individuals are when you speak about this thing called God. So with that being said, again, a personal God is someone would be more so someone who believes that they are a person. They believe that they exist separate from God, and that is something the West is accustomed to. However, the Eastern philosophy or principles or spiritual teachings would differ. They tend to take more of a non-duality perspective, meaning that there is no separation from God. Again, I hate to use the word God because people in the West would get confused and say, "What? What are you trying to say? You are trying to say you are no, it's not separate from God and all of that." That is why using the word God is such a tricky subject. I am utilizing the word God and I'm making a concession using saying the word God instead of saying consciousness. So from an Eastern perspective, they would say there is no separation between you and consciousness. You are one with consciousness, you are one with awareness, you are one with this, what they would call also Brahman or Atman, the soul. They would utilize words such as those, but they would not utilize words such as God. So that is what I'm saying to you. The word God is a very, very, very tricky subject. However, I just want us to understand the difference, what I'm talking about. So when I use the word God in this particular concept, I'm talking about the Abrahamic concept. But from my perspective, when I speak of God in terms of pure consciousness, pure awareness, more of a non-duality perspective is where I'm coming from, an existentialist perspective. Like I said, I am not a theist, I am not a theist, and I am not an atheist. However, I am an existentialist, but I am not an atheist. So, with that being said, back to what I was saying. So, again, a personal Eastern Western God would be caused because of having the belief of being a person, being I am this, you are that, I am here, God is there. That is the concept of the East, and the West. However, the East perspective is a totally different perspective. There is no separation from you and God. There is only God, and that is the angle where I am coming from. That is what I teach, a non-duality perspective. There is no separation between you and consciousness. There is no separation between you and this awareness. And that's what I'm talking about. And from the West, that is a very difficult concept a very difficult pill to swallow, if I may say, because we were taught that this God lives somewhere else and God is in the sky, He is there, I am here, and He does this and I do that, and He corrects and He punishes or He rewards, and so forth and so forth. That is not what I'm talking about here today. So, to get a different perspective, like I said again, why would this God who is all loving allow certain things? Either God is not all loving or he is not all powerful, because why would he allow all of these things, or he's not all knowing? I'm just saying there's many situations whereas we would wonder why would this all loving God allow all of these unloving things to happen. Why would this all powerful God allow all of these things to happen if he has the power to stop all of these things? If why would an all-knowing God know that this particular atrocity would happen and kill thousands and millions of lives and so forth and so forth. Why would he allow it? But again, like I said, the Western philosophies, the priest or pastor, they would say God is free will. He gives us the free will to do whatever. And because of Adam and Eve, the sin, so therefore, we paid the price. Again, that also is somewhat a controversy. Why would we all be allowed to pay a price because someone else did such an atrocity? Why would the whole mankind pay such a price because of two individuals eons, thousands and thousands of years ago? So again, that is why the things that I spoke of does not necessarily stand up per se when it comes down to understanding why. None of the answers tend to give us any type of closure. So again, like I'm saying, from a non-dualistic perspective, there is no separation from God. So from a dualist perspective, God is personal. God is personal. He is personal in your life. There's you and there's God. From an impersonal perspective, God is not separate from you. And again, for the thousandth time, when I use the word God, I am not referring to the Abrahamic God who separated the Red Sea and who did all of these things. I'm not talking about that God per se. That's why I'm not speaking about any particular God. I am talking about consciousness awareness. When I use the word God, consciousness, when I use the word God, replace that God with consciousness awareness. That is what I'm referring to as God, not a particular God per se, not Allah, not Yahweh, not Krishna, not Yesus, no particular God, not His Majesty. I am referring to consciousness. I'm talking from a neutral perspective. So again, from an Eastern perspective, there is no separation. So therefore, there's no separation from this God. There's no separation from this God. So therefore, this non-separation is a very difficult concept for individuals in the in the West to grasp. So when we look at this God, when we look at God from a non-dualistic perspective, we tend to see God as being like the TV screen. A TV screen does not have any particular belief. It doesn't care what video, what movies it plays. It doesn't care if the video it plays is a horror movie. It doesn't care if it's a sad movie. It doesn't care if it's a happy movie. It doesn't care if anything happens tragic on the screen. That is how we have to look at the thing you call God from a non-dualistic perspective. God is like the sky, not the clouds, the sky itself, where the clouds are positioned, where the clouds float around, and the space that we are in, the space that the universe is in. That would be an example of God. And I can only give examples. However, I cannot per se give a solid, concrete definition of this non-describable thing. If I would say this no thing is not nothing, but it's not a thing. However, again, so a TV screen would be a good example of this non-duality perspective. Where I'm coming from, the TV would be considered God in a particular sense. It does not care what its videos it shows. It's a neutral thing. The sky, the TV is not affected by anything that it plays, any type of scary movie or whatever. The TV screen does not get scared. The screen does not get sad when there's a bomb went off and thousands of people got killed. It doesn't get scared when the boogeyman shows up. This is what I'm talking about, an impersonal God, an impersonal God. And however, the only way that someone could accept an impersonal God is if they do not see themselves as a personal being. So just like what I said, the personal God, the individuals from an Abrahamic perspective, they see God as being over there and me being there. God is God and I am me. So therefore, they see themselves as being personal. So therefore, they will see God as being also a personal God as well. However, when you see yourself from an impersonal perspective and you look at yourself as I am not a solid concrete, I do not necessarily exist the way that I believe I exist, and you look at yourself from an illusory perspective, from a dream state perspective, and you see yourself more so as a dream character or a video game character, from that aspect you do not see God as being a personal being. God is more impersonal because there is no God and there is no you. There is no separation from God because you and God are of the same thing. And again, this may sound like blasphemy to a Christian or someone from the West. That is why I am saying, do not get confused, because I am utilizing the word God, that I'm speaking about the God who passed the Red Sea and the God who did this and did that for the Israelites. That's not the God I'm talking about. I am thus using the word God so we can understand the difference between the different deities from a personal perspective and an impersonal perspective, from a duality perspective, whereas you exist and God exists, versus a non-duality perspective, whereas there is only God and there is no you. That is a different perspective. So again, the Christians or the Western philosophies would say that the root cause of all suffering is because free will. God allowed us because He allowed us to do whatever. However, what I am saying is now that's going to be very shocking to many people. Yes, all of that sounds good, but from an Eastern perspective, I would say that because there is no separation between God and there's no separation between you, God does not know suffering. I know that sounds very, very different from what you've been told or what you've been taught, but from a non duality perspective, God does not know suffering because, like I said, just like the TV screen does not know suffering. The TV screen does not feel sad when someone dies. The TV screen does not get sick when someone gets sick. The TV screen does not have any emotional effect. Whatever emotional video scene is played on the scene, the TV is always neutral. And from a non duality perspective, God is always neutral. God does not have any feelings for you in that same sense that you may think, because there is no you. However, God may feel certain things because of your feelings, believe that you are sick and you are this and so forth. And because God is you, then God feels things indirectly, if I may say. He has indirect experiences through you. So the TV does not necessarily have any feelings or experiences itself, but it feels and it has experiences through the movies and the TV channels, whatever is played on the screen. Hopefully that is kind of making sense. So again, a very difficult concept to understand God as not being personal. It's very difficult for individuals who do not understand a non-duality perspective, because once you see yourself as you, and then you will always feel like, well, God knows everything about me, God this and God that. Yes, God knows everything about you because God is you. And that is one of the reasons why God knows everything about you. And He knows everything because God is everything. And that is a different concept from the Eastern belief to the Western belief. And where I'm coming from is more of a Eastern concept, whereas there is no you for God to 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 look after, or whatever the case may be, because it is only God appearing as you, God appearing as me, or having experiences as me, having experiences as you. This is what they would be considered to be the dream state. Just like, again, the TV screen does not have any feelings about what movie shows on the screen. Just like the game character too does not know it's in a game. The game character, from its perspective, it believes that it is a character doing whatever it is doing. It does not know that it is not a part of a video game. And so, with that being said, that is what I'm saying to you, because the game character is not aware that it's a part of a video game. So, and the program per se, the program, be it Windows, DOS, or whatever the case may be, Linux or whatever, it's the program is the only thing that exists. The program, the guys who created the game is the only thing exists, and they are just appearances on the screen, appearing to be fighting dragons or whatever else the game character is doing. But however, the game character is really doing nothing. Just like a dream character, when you go to bed and you have a dream, when your character gets sick in a dream, you do not get sick at all. So the same thing, you or the dream character, when you get sick, God does not get sick. When you worry, God does not worry. Just like the screen does not worry, God does not worry. Therefore, when something happens to you physically in the dream, you get shot in the dream, God is not shot. So therefore, you tend to not, you do not have any effect on God per se directly. God only understands or feels whatever you feel indirectly. Whatever you feel goes on in your life. That is how God has the feeling of these things indirectly, but he or it or whatever it may be does not feel like you think. You feel, so therefore you think God feels as well. That is why they say that God made, according to scriptures, God made man in his image and his likeness. And if his image and his likeness is fearless and does not, and again, that too is coming from whatever perspective you're looking from. So, from an Abraham perspective, God is an angry God, God is a jealous God, God has fear, anger, he has favorites per se, things of that sort. That is not the case from an Eastern perspective. That is not the case from an Advaita Vedanta perspective. That is not the case from a non-duality perspective, because God does not have any favorites, because God is the only thing there is that exists. It is only God. There's no you, there's no me. So therefore, just like the dream character does not suffer, just like the game character does not really suffer, just like uh, the dream character does not suffer in the dream, and the game character does not suffer in the game. You too may be suffering, appearing to be suffering in the physical world. However, you are not suffering. God is not suffering at all. So therefore, with that being said, therefore, God does not know suffering at all, because there is only God. There is no existence of anything else for God to know. So, therefore, if God only knows itself, he cannot suffer, because it's only itself. And we suffer again because of separation. We feel separated from God, therefore, we suffer. But until we come to know ourselves, who we are and what we are, only then we can actually get rid of this suffering. But that, again, this is a totally different perspective than what most individuals in the in the West are used to. God does not know suffering. And I know that sounds kind of a little controversial, but again, like I said, think of the sky. When the sky has a thunderstorm, a rainstorm, or whatever happens in the sky, does the sky itself is the sky itself affected by what's going on? Is the sky affected by the rain? No. Is the sky affected by the lightning? No. That is what I'm trying to give you guys an example of what God is from a different perspective. There is the space itself is not affected. If something goes off, a bomb goes off, and there's nuclear weapon goes off, nuclear chemical goes off in the space and around us, and whatever the case may be. Yes, the air might be affected. However, the space itself is untouched. The space, you cannot destroy the space. You can only affect the things in the space, but you cannot affect the space itself. So with that being said, hopefully this will give you guys a much better understanding. So when you think you are suffering and God knows that you're suffering, if you are coming from an Abrahamic perspective, a duality perspective, yes, God knows you are suffering. God knows everything that you're going through. Yes, God is looking out for you and things of that sort. But if you're coming from a non-dualist perspective, God does not know you are suffering, because there is only God and God cannot suffer. From a non-dualist perspective, God is not a jealous God, God is not an angry God, God is not a favorite, because there is only God. If there is only God, why would God be angry? What is there for God to be angry at? If God is only God, who is there for God to have favorites to have favorites with? He does not have any favorites, because there is no you and there is no me separate from God. So with that being said, I hopefully this gave you guys a much better understanding, coming from a dualist perspective or a non-duality perspective. There is no suffering in God's eyesight. God is not suffering. God cannot suffer. God does not feel pain. God does not have any remorse, anger, jealousy, anything of that sort from a non-dualist perspective. However, coming from a dualistic perspective, yes, these things are true. Yes, these things actually have some effect on a dualistic perspective, a dualistic God. But from a non-dualistic perspective, no, there is no separation, none whatsoever. So, so again, hopefully this help you guys to get a much better understanding of seeing God from a personal perspective, meaning that you exist and God exists, and also seeing God from an impersonal perspective, seeing God that you do not exist and only God exists. So hopefully, again, this clears up the answer. Uh, why does God allow suffering in the world? Again, from a non-dualist perspective, God does not allow suffering in the world because there is no suffering. There is nobody to suffer. Again, in the dream state, the dream character, when the dream character gets sick or when something happens to the dream character, there's nothing happens to you at all. In the game world, when the game character gets injured or whatever, nothing actually happens to the program, to the Windows, the DOS, or the program. The game just basically, you could reset the game and play the game starts all over again. But nothing actually affects the primary, the root consciousness, the root awareness. And so that is what I'm trying to say here. Again, a different perspective is not that God allows any suffering in the world. Suffering simply does not exist. The world does not exist. The universe does not exist. All of these things are just appearances, manifestations of God, appearing to be separate entities and objects, but there is only God. So how can you suffer if there is no you? How can there be pain if there is no you? So if you believe in a angry, jealous God that feels pain and suffer and so forth, it's most likely, again, if you are made in the image of that God, you will feel pain and suffering as well. However, if you take a non-dualist perspective and your God or the entity that you believe in is consciousness awareness, that consciousness awareness does not feel pain, does not feel does not, I shouldn't say feel pain, but does not suffer. And if you are that thing as well, you do not suffer as well. So that is a different concept, a different perspective. When we look at God, we either see God from a personal perspective, or an impersonal perspective. And the angle that I'm coming from today is more so coming from an impersonal perspective. So hopefully this video cleared up a few things in reference to seeing God from a completely different perspective. Not saying that God is allowing any of these things are happening. It's just that God does not know any of these things are happening directly. Again, this concept may take some time to swallow or understand. That is why all of my videos are pointing back to one simple philosophy: know thyself. And if you want to know yourself, this would not sound too foreign or too sound like blasphemy, because the only reason this may sound like blasphemy is because you see yourself as being a separate entity apart from God, which is the root cause of all suffering: separation, feeling a separation from God and others. But if you do not see yourself as a separate entity and a separate entity from God, then this information would make sense, totally make sense, and it would not be blasphemous from that perspective. So with that being said, that is the reason why God does not know there's any suffering, because from a non-duality perspective, suffering does not exist. And I am not saying, and by no means I want anyone to misconstrue what I'm saying to you, because I know there's and many individuals who may be sick, individuals may be in a hospital suffering, and some people are dying and different things of that sort. By no means I am saying that these suffering is not real, because the illusion is real. The pain is real. However, from a deeper core fundamental principle perspective, nothing exists. So with that being said, I'm going to end this video. Hopefully you guys have got some information that was valuable to you guys. Again, please go ahead, check out my other videos, like, share, and subscribe. And I really appreciate you guys for watching and hanging on this long. Once again, Triple P, and I'm out.
Oh.